I need my space! In this video, I'm going to give you a detailed tour of my art studio and just a peek at some of my other creative spaces. My sister's granddaughter asked if I would do a tour on my arts and crafts space so they can get ideas on how to set up. I tend to like to work with an L shape, so I have my workspace and then my supplies on my right hand. And so this video, it serves a couple of purposes. It's going to show what I'm currently doing and show you my storage, some of what works and some of what doesn't work, and to show you why I need to have my own space. This is my art corner, and it's kind of like a cubby hole. It's just a tiny little space, and I feel a little bit claustrophobic here because I have to share this space with my husband, and he's got a small corner, but that's all he needs. And the family library, we have our library shelf of books. I have the children's books down there. And my son, he's got a huge corner. Right now, I feel kind of crowded because my space is over there in the corner. I have to share this room with my son, who he loves to have clutter. This was my setup before my son moved in. It was nice. I had a lot of space, but I had to make space for his large desk. Since my son moved in, I have been confined to this little kind of a cubicle. So this is my art creating space, and it doesn't really give me a whole lot of room. I have some supplies down here, and I have a lot of my art stuff in these units right here, and some other crafting supplies, as well as personal files over here. There. But I would like a little more space because this doesn't give me a lot of space to paint. Here I would do my watercolor and my drawing and planning, and then I have my easel, which I'm limited to the size paintings I can do with this small space that I have here. Inventive to work on very large paintings, which was a challenge that I did manage to do. Here is where I keep my painting brushes for acrylic paint. This is called a quiver. You can strap it around your shoulder. This is all the brushes that I use for my acrylic painting. And I have a second container from extra brushes that don't fit in here. This is a hand that I can pose for drawing hands. The human figure, I have that, which I'll probably just put on display in my crafting cottage. But for now, it stays in the box because I don't have a lot of space here. I collect small plates and small bowls, and I use them as a painting palette for watercolor or acrylic paint. This is my favorite go-to painting palettes anymore because I just dispense the paint that I'm using at the time, and when I'm all done, if it's acrylic paint, I wash it out immediately. If it's watercolor paint, like this right here is Prussian blue, I will keep the paint in here because I can just wet it and reuse it. I have some glues for crafting. And I also have my leftover pencils. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. They're probably going to wind up as a craft project eventually, but I put them in these small baby jars because it just looks cute. But eventually, when I get enough of them, I'm probably going to do something with them and they'll become a craft project. For right now, this will change. For right now, I have my transfer paper and my smart vinyl for my Cricut machine, which I just got for Christmas. So this is a whole new realm of crafting that I will be getting into. And back there, I have a bin where I keep some of my matted artwork that is ready to sell or to gift. They're small paintings, nothing really fabulous, just some small paintings that I'd really kind of like to just get rid of. I used to have tons and tons of them, but I've been just giving it away because I just don't want to keep them anymore. Actually, I like that painting. That painting, maybe I'll hang that in my crafting cottage. Yeah, that will fit the style that I want in my crafting cottage, and I like this painting. Okay, I think I've just made a decision. It's going in my crafting cottage, but for the most part, I would like to get rid of all this spare art. I made this little box out of foam core just for a place to store my finished artwork. Here I have drawing paper, small canvases, and some leftover chipboard. My collection of brushes, mostly for watercolor, sometimes acrylic paint. That's a water painting jar. Back here I have pastel papers for working with pastels and chalk. I have my supply of watercolor paper, and I have just some random pieces of artwork that have not been matted. And over here I have this tub of random stuff that I want to hide, and so it's in the box. And in here, a divider box where I have inks, a brush cleaner for repairing brushes, and a paint thinner, and this is a brush cleaner. Extra netted erasers, which are, oh, they're still good, and a bunch of these kind of erasers that I don't like. I like these, but I don't like these. These are the worst kind of erasers. They leave a pink smear, so I don't even use those. My preferred eraser is the netted eraser. So I always have a bunch of those. My salt shaker when I'm paint with salt. Oh, I used to keep these cartridges to put my netted eraser in. These are film cartridge containers, which you can't get anymore because everything's gone digital. But I don't like clutter, so I like to put everything in white bins or boxes to hide the clutter. So like everything is white. And I don't mind seeing my brushes sitting out, because brushes standing in jars, to me that's cool. And I found this at a thrift store, which is a cute little brass container for my miniature brushes. And this actually used to be a chocolate, my favorite, Ghirardelli chocolate. I need to polish it up, but I don't mind seeing them sit out. Down below, I'll show you what I keep here. This bin is my watercolor bin. I have my painting palette, which I keep in a large plastic bag. I got the bag from somebody's Sunday school packet, and I just said, hey, I could use that. So I've put my favorite painting palette, because it has five mixing wells, and then all the colors that I use. Keeping it in here keeps the dust off my paints. And this is my to-go watercolor bin. In here I have spare paint, painting sponges, and my favorite, most prized watercolor brushes. These are only used for watercolor. I have certain brushes that are kept somewhere else for acrylic paint, but these are strictly for watercolor. And in here I have my favorite Kolinsky paintbrushes. This one brush alone is a $185 brush. The hairs are made from Kolinsky, and they are so super soft. And so when I want to blend colors, I can get a smooth transition without any lines in it. So I have a whole set of these in different sizes, and these are just wonderful. I think this brush here is about a $110 brush. So I don't let nobody use these brushes. These brushes are very special. This is just a standard ordinary paintbrush. But you compare this to this. This is like a Volkswagen and this is a Cadillac. And the difference is remarkable. Kolinsky is also very absorbent, and so it holds a lot of water. Of course, you have to learn how to use the proper amount of water, but you can get a lot more painting done with that than you could this. But I still have, you know, some cheaper brushes in here, and I also have my large, I love my angles. My angles are really awesome for doing lines, like doing buildings or fences. And I need to have a 1-inch brush for applying large washes of color. So I needed to have those. And then I got some synthetic paint brushes too, like these two. I'm not going to show you all the brushes, but just the main ones. These are a synthetic brush, but I really like them. They keep a very sharp point. I have two sizes. I have a large one and I have a small one for very sharp pointed details. So I like these two. As far as the synthetic brush goes, I would not use this for blending, but this one, I tend to use this one a lot for painting hair, doing very fine lines. My watercolor brushes are very special, and they are protected in this bamboo keeper, which I usually have this laying out on my desk when I'm painting. And the bamboo strips allows air to pass through, but I like to let my brushes just kind of sit like that and dry before I roll it up. Now this holder, when it came, I would pick it up wrong and all my brushes would fall out. So I put this red thread in here to make sure that I know that this is the top and this is the bottom. So I never dump them out anymore. I also have a Draftsman brush when I'm doing pencil sketching, but this is like my to-go package. If I want to take my watercolor paints and go outside somewhere, this is what I take with me, plus a water jar and a rag, and then I'm ready to paint. All right, let me show you what else is in that bin. I have a spare set of watercolor. This is Master's Touch. I also use wreaths, my light box, and then I have an old, this is the brand of watercolor paints that I use also. But this, I have converted this into a pastel box. So I've got random different sets of pastels. This is a very old set, and this is the one that I use the most. So this has become my pastel box. It used to be a watercolor box. I probably picked it up at a yard sale because I like to repurpose and recycle things, but it has become a nice little handy carrying case to keep all of my pastels. Well, I do have more pastels, but the main ones, my favorite ones. So I guess you could say this bin is where I keep my favorites. And my watercolor brushes are right handy, and they're handy to my desk. All I have to do is swing around from my desk, reach over here, grab my watercolor paints, and I'm prepared to paint. In this cubby, I forgot to show you, I have my refill paints that I keep. I have different containers of them, and they're just stuck there for now, but when my watercolor paint wells get empty, I have a backup supply. I always keep watercolor. That's my #1 most favorite art medium. Acrylic would be my #2 favorite. In that bin, I just have a tub of printmaking supplies and some print blocks, which I'm not going to show you. I don't do a whole lot of printmaking. I did when I was a teacher, and I probably will do some more at some point, but I haven't done it in a while. And then the last shelf down below, I have a gnome that I need to paint. It's going to go into my fairy garden, and I have a bunch of binders of photos and teaching materials that I've prepared for teaching art, but I'm no longer teaching art. I don't want to be going out every day to teaching art. I'm retired from that, but I don't mind hosting a class maybe once a month of a group of ladies. That's what I want to be doing. I don't want to be teaching every single day because it just ate up my time. I did it for 17 years and I decided to retire from that. I retired in 2020. In 2020, when the shutdown happened, it was the perfect opportunity to make a clean break and to quit teaching art. So I really need to go through all of those and get rid of the stuff that I no longer need because I will be using this for my crafting cottage. Okay, what else do I have here? All right, beside my desk, this is just random storage of old photos. You don't see these anymore. Negatives. You don't. Everything has gone digital. I don't even know what's in here anymore. But I still have those. So, and these are just spare photos that are all organized by file, and more negatives. So I don't know what I'm going to do with that. I need to decide. Do I need to preserve those? Do I need to get rid of them? I don't know. Gold metallic paint for a special project. I have clips. I use these for a lot of reasons, a lot of purposes. It's very useful. Sometimes it's for clipping paper onto a painting board. I have my spray bottle, my water spray bottle. I picked this up at a hair store because I often will need to spray water when I am either keeping my acrylic paint fresh so it doesn't dry up on me while I'm painting, or sometimes I use it for a special application when I'm watercolor painting. And a cubby for pens, pencils, palette knives, paper punch. I just like collecting jars. I like jars of different sizes. This is my hand drill for doing crafting projects, and I have my Sharpies, my fine point Sharpies, and micro markers. So here's a quick look at my workspace. I keep a few things here, some extra pastels, pencils, colored pencils, my drawing box, my pencil box, watercolor pencils, just some tools that I keep here, and then my work desk for drawing and for watercolor painting. Also, I use this desk for planning. What I showed you here, and then there's this unit behind me, and I have more file folders. Things that I used to use for teaching art, which I need to go through and just get rid of to clean out. And sometimes I need to use a magnifying glass to see really fine print or fine detail, so that's why I have that. And this contains family files, and I have wires, wooden parts for making various things out of wood. I have batteries and my toolkit for needle nose pliers and wire cutters. And here, a lot of plastic bags. The main thing in here is a printing press for printmaking. It's a cheap one. It's not that great. I used to use it, but I found better methods. I probably should get rid of that. I definitely need to do some destashing. And in here I have some bolts of foam for carving. Oh yes, I should show you that. My oval mat cutter, lots of staplers, and my staple thing. And what is this? I have forgotten what this is. For permanent tape. I haven't even used this in so long. I don't even know what it is. Another stapler. I don't like that one. My favorite stapler is this, but I have three staple guns. And okay, these are the blades. This type of a stapler, it shoots out these little blades that hold your artwork in your frames. And they're glued together like this. and they shoot them out one by one. So that's what that is. Very useful to have that if you frame artwork. And this is for cutting foam core. You can use both sides to cut. So I keep all of these supplies in this tub, this Calyx unit. I showed you what's in the 4 drawers, and I showed you what was in that tub right there. The other 4 boxes are just personal files, so I'm going to have to find out. I'm probably going to have to get my husband a cubicle, a 1x4, a Calyx unit to put these boxes in for our filing system. I may have to change out those boxes because they're just cardboard boxes, and there's a lot of paper in those things, and they're very, very heavy. They're paperwork that we want to keep, so I'll probably get different containers that won't, the stronger containers, because those are going to stay in the house. But I'm taking this unit to my crafting cottage. And here I've got 2 tubs there. Let me show you what these plastic containers come from IKEA. This is the shingles that needs to go on the dollhouse, the Victorian dollhouse that I had started. Everything in here is related to dollhouse. So that's all for one project, and I'd like to get back to that project and finish. And here I just have leftover flowers. A lot of times I will pull apart a plant and just use certain parts for other craft projects, so the random flowers and leaves just wind up in this bin. And I don't like to see the clutter, so I like to hide them in white boxes to keep them kind of looking very blank and not cluttered, because see, I like the cleanness of all white. I don't like something to look like that where there's too much color. That's just, to me, that's overwhelming, and it messes with my mind and my creativity. I had to move my easel out of the way. I had to move it just to get access to this space. And here is my newest addition to my crafting world. The cutter and the tools, and this is my Cricut maker. It's a smart machine, and I'm excited to begin to start using this. Have some of the tools down here. This is first thing I'm going to be doing is making signs, but I know that there's a whole lot of stuff you can do. This is going to making signs a whole lot easier, and I can mass produce a lot faster. It'll also make gift giving a lot less work. So I'm excited about starting to use this. So now I have to plan in my crafting cottage where this is going to go and all the supplies that go with it. Charcoal pencils, watercolor pencils, oil-based pencils. I would like to better organize those. More paint tubes, and different, what are these? Watercolor palette trays, which I don't use anymore. I probably should get rid of. More drawing pencils, razor blades, charcoal, drawing, water-soluble pencils. This is my scrap bin. I take recycled paper, rip it up into quarters, and that will be used for notes. Another watercolor palette. That's actually a useful one. I'll probably save that. And I have some other, I think that's gouache paint set. And calligraphy stuff. And some pencil, very old, very old staplers. It goes to this really old heavy-duty stapler that used to belong to my husband's mother. So I've been using that, and I can't believe, she's been dead for years, can't believe I still got staples left. I'm almost empty though. And the next has, these are watercolor pencils. I think this is like a drawing kit with pencils and erasers to go, and a small watercolor palette to go, some pastels, which I hate them. They're too soft, and I used them with kids, and they got chalk everywhere. Pastel pencils, just charcoal pencils, oil pastels when they get messed up, broken. So just a lot of random art supplies that I really probably should de-stash what I don't use and better organize. And our tape drawer. Duct tape, scotch tape, packing tape, you name it. Painter's tape. And then these two bins I need to go through. They're photos for art that I use for drawing with my art students, and I no longer teach, so I need to go through all that, decide what to keep, what to get rid of, and just make space, because I'm going to need that in my crafting cottage. I forgot to share what's in these 4 bins down here. I have this, it's actually a prop that I made for one of my videos. And I keep it here because it's a place that I can put my drinking cup, because it's a level surface, but it's also useful when I want to take something off the shelf, like that. And in here, I keep my extension cords, because I'm always needing to have an extension cord when I set up my lights, sometimes my cameras, to keep the battery from running out. A couple of random containers that are not being used for anything currently. What do we have here? Let's see. Well, not a whole lot. I need to better use this space. What are these? Wow, it's been so long since I've used those. I don't even know what they're used for. I see some prints for making designs on t-shirts that I used to do years ago. So that needs to be repurposed. It's kind of wasted. These are my miniature painting palettes that has a sponge in it, and I kind of like this size. That way you don't dispense too much paint. You can keep your acrylic paints wet by wetting the sponge, but I find the sponges have a limited use. They eventually grow mold. It's important to dry them out when you're finished with them, but the mold starts eating them away. So I have a bunch of them because I used to teach art. I may use them again when I conduct classes with adults. So this is something I'll probably hang on to because it's small, doesn't take up a lot of space. Okay, here I have a bunch of jars. I have spray bottles. That way if I need to spray some watercolor paint. And I like to save jars. This is a cool shaped jar. Cool shaped jar. And this size jar makes a good, it's a yeast jar, makes a good size jar for watercolor painting. I always have more jars than I need. This is a bean jar, and this is a jam jar, and I just love their shape. And I don't mind that they look all nasty and paint dripped all over them. It just looks, to me it looks artistic. And I guess I threw this one in here because it's got a nice shape. Probably it had jam in it. So I save little jars for painting. And what's in here? We have for hanging pictures, small nails, small screws, screw hooks, eye hooks. And this is more oil paints. And then this box, shoe box, has got calligraphy inks and pens and a whole bunch of colored inks and ink bottles and different tips. And I use this for when teaching classes. I'll probably save that because the ladies can learn how to do calligraphy. And the last 2 bits at the bottom, papers that I need to go through and decide what to keep, what to get rid of. And just some binders. These 2 actually are functional. This is my home improvement diagrams that I keep, financial information, and all. I think most of that is all related to calligraphy. So that's my art space. The rest of my art supplies are in this cabinet here. That unit used to be TV armoire, which I've converted it into my art supply closet. Top where the VCR used to be, I keep all my portfolios, and I have sketchbooks, random stack of art, my palettes. I have way too many Stay Wet palettes, and I'm kind of getting away from not using them anymore. I might have to have a yard sale and sell them, and maybe keep one or two, but maybe I got the smaller ones. I might keep like one of those and one of the big ones and get rid of the rest, because I find I'm not using it. Instead, I use my little porcelain plates. These are all my acrylic paints in a tub. I'm not going to pull it out. It's full of acrylic paint of every color, and this is all my oil paints. It's full of every color you can imagine for oil painting. And these are just crafting supplies for dolls out of clothespins. That's everything in that box for doing that. And here's an unfinished sign that I haven't finished painting, because I used to sell a bunch of signs on Etsy, and then some random other art supplies which I seriously need to de-stash and get rid of stuff. My wood burning tool kit is in that bag, and down here I have my large bottles of paint. And here's something I've learned: when buying acrylic paint, unless you're going to use a whole lot of it, do not buy the large containers, because after a while the paint breaks down and it turns to rubber, and it becomes useless. So when I'm doing a big project, I try to use these up right away. But I think I'm going to wind up having to throw away a lot of these bottles of paint. It's much better to buy them in smaller tubes. They'll last a lot longer. But always try to use up your tubes before you open up a fresh one, so that your paint will last longer with acrylic paint. Here is my basket of my glue gun and all the glue sticks. I got 2 different size glue sticks because I have 2 different size glue guns, and I find it's useful to have a small gun. Craft paints, I usually use those for painting faces, flesh tones for doing faces for dolls, and just random sample paints. I picked this up at a yard sale, secondhand shops. There's starfish, the seashells, and this can be used for crafting. And there's a glass pot that needs to be cleaned up. I just love the look of glass. That'll probably go into my crafting cottage. But this is a potential craft project with a seashell theme, which I haven't decided exactly what it's going to be. Sometimes it's home samples. Sometimes I will go and get a sample of paint that you can buy at the hardware store, and you can use that as a acrylic paint. But I usually keep the wood stain in the woodwork shop. That's my art supply closet. This is games down here. I'm not taking the games with me. The games will stay in the house. But that means I will be able to use that space below for something else. Recycle this unit as part of my storage unit in my crafting cottage. Also, beside my desk, since I have this shelf here, which actually keeps the Legos for my grandkids to play with, I decided to put a pegboard on the back of it, and I keep some of my tools. I have my saws for doing small woodworking projects, my leveler for hanging things, some of my drawing tools like my T-square, various size rulers, and a drafting brush, masking tape, which I use it often with watercolor painting because I tape my paper to an artboard. And then I have random large brushes that I use for household projects, and the mallet for closing the paint cans. Also a hammer, because I gotta have a hammer in the house. And my paint can opener and my compass and a needle nose pliers. What are you doing there? You're supposed to be in another location. But it's handy to have a pegboard for keeping supplies. And these are beside my desk, so they're handy to my drawing desk, which is often visited by a cat. Because whenever I am sitting down doing something, that one of the cats has to join me. One of my 4 cats that live in the house. There is a space right down in here. I have my mat cutter, which I can't keep it out all the time, so I've always kept it in the box. I also keep boards that I will tape a piece of watercolor paper to it when I'm working on a painting. I also have my very large sketchbooks. There's a variety of large sketchbooks and a painting, a large painting that is partially done. And this is actually a mirror, a framed mirror. Who knows, maybe it'll wind up in my crafting cottage. Yeah, gotta have a mirror. I have a mirror in every room in this house. I have to have a mirror in the cottage. Behind my drawing desk, it houses all of the Legos for the grandkids to play with. This unit will stay in this room because I want the grandkids to always have a place to, I want them to have access to the Legos. Eventually, someday, I'd like to make a Lego table where they can just have a place, a designated place to work on. And here I have mats, large mats that have been cut, mat boards, and that box there. Trying to keep the cats from destroying the box. Maybe if I cover it with like contact paper, they won't bother it. And then we always have a table in the middle of the room. It's like a project table. Currently, this is a project waiting. I need to make a box for the wise men to put them away because the Christmas decorations have all been put away except for these wise men. And so I need to make a box to fit them because I don't really have a good box for them. And these are just some boxes that I got, some new boots, and the cats like to get into the boxes. So I just put it up here for now because no project is happening right here. And the cats can play with the boxes because they love to play with boxes. Here I have two cats outside that are peeking in. They're watching me, or they might be saying, hey, is it lunchtime? Can you feed us? I think I need to feed them. But you know what I find? I am not using this space as much as I used to because I feel crowded in this, especially because of that right there. I feel crowded. I hate this. I hate all that clutter. It's just too dark. It's too overwhelming. It's overpowering. See my corner? It's kind of white and a lot cleaner. Is still small and crowded, but it's a lot less cluttered with the white. And that's what I'm going with my crafting cottage, the white cabinets. And I think I want the walls to be a green color, a pale, soft green color. That cabinet is going to be painted white before it goes out into the cottage, because I'm keeping that because it's very useful and it hides a lot of the mess. So you can kind of see why I need to move out of this space, this clutter. I don't like the dark colors. I don't like all the clutter, even though a lot of that is my artwork. It's just small artworks, nothing really fabulous that I don't know what else to do with it. It's just there. Here's an example of the kind of detail that I can paint with watercolor. I'm tired of these subjects where there's just an animal and a plain background usually, although this one has a much more interesting composition. I'm just bored of doing these little tiny pieces of art. I want to do bigger, more complicated stuff. Here's one of my acrylic paintings. I love the flowers. The impressionistic style of the way the flowers are painted. Here's another acrylic painting. And here's another acrylic painting. And I like this one. This takes me back to Mount Rainier in Washington State. And that was such a beautiful mountain that I lived nearby. Here's another view of the same mountain and the Skagit Valley Tulip Festival, because I used to live in that area for about 6 years. Washington State is one of the prettiest states I've ever visited or lived in. So I tend to not use a project table. I lately have been using my dining room table in my kitchen because it's more open and it's a neater looking space, and it's got pretty good lighting, and I usually plug in my light right there and run a cord here, and I set up here, and that usually works pretty good for doing a lot of my projects. But if I have a big project that's ongoing, that means it's taken up this table space. There's only 3 of us that live here, and so we eat at that end of the table. So this end, often there will be a project here with all the stuff that goes with it. And I'd really like to get that kind of stuff out of my living space. Are you getting the picture why I need to have my own crafting space? Okay, sandwiched between my kitchen, my living room, is my office desk. This is my computer desk where I edit my videos, and my printer. And as you can see right now, I am crocheting a blanket. My crochet basket sits right here. It's always filled with whatever the project is I'm working on at the time, and I have a good light, so that's why. And the chair is very comfortable, so I like to sit here when I'm doing my knitting or crochet. Kind of a dual purpose, right? It's just an extra table. I guess you could call it like a game table. It's kind of an overflow if we have company and there's not enough seating at the dining room table. So it's a useful space. And here is my yarn stash. Every one of those baskets are plumb full of yarn, and I have more elsewhere because these are all full. So that's my stash of yarn. Doesn't it look pretty? You see, this is what I like. I know what's in it. I know that this one has all the baby colors. This has all the bold, bright colors. This is all the worsted wool. And this is the tiny little scrap pieces left over. So I know exactly what's in it, and it looks pretty, and it doesn't detract from my decor. That's how I like to store things. And they may stay here, or they might go in the crafting cottage. Since the color of my cottage is going to be green, but a light green, they would look nice in there. But I will wait and see. I will wait and decide later how I set things up in there, whether or not I want to move those over there, or I'd like to keep them in the house. I don't know. That's something I haven't figured out yet. You want to see my card making station? It's in this room. Wait a minute. This is the master bedroom. That's right. This is the master bedroom. I have overtaken this corner of the room as my card making and scrapbooking and paper crafting station. I had to take up space, but it's a pretty large room. My husband doesn't complain, so that's good. When I move into my crafting cottage and all that stuff is going to be gone, this space is going to be different. I'm going to put a big armoire there. Then I'm going to try to get one to match the dressers that I already have, that style. I want something that style right there, because all my dressers in this room match, and I've picked them up at secondhand stores or antique stores, and I would like to have an armoire to match. And the armoire will have, it'll be a coat closet, because this house doesn't have a coat closet, and it will be storage of all the sheets, because right now the supply of sheets for this room, sheets and pillowcases, are in that little shelf, and I want to get rid of that shelf. So there'll be a big armoire over here, and then I want to get a chaise lounge to put right there by the window as it's just a place to sit. My son has company, and I'm not too interested in them. I don't want to be around them. I want to have my own space, so I want to have a little chaise lounge so I could just sit here by the window, you know, watch a video on my iPad or read a book or something. So this space will actually be more of a bedroom space for the master bedroom once I have moved out of it. But it's not just card making, it's scrapbooking, journal making as well. I also have a lot of my basket making supplies on this shelf. My threads and the boxes up top contain pine needles of various colors. So I have definitely more basket making supplies down there. Some of my wallpapers right there. Extra camera equipment right there. Stamps in here. Dies right there. Threads, different color threads for sewing or coiling baskets. That's even got a scrap papers that I use for doing my gift card holders, more dies, and random paper craft supplies, sometimes my ephemera and some crafting books up there. My master bedroom, and I would like it to remain a bedroom instead of a bedroom slash craft space. So that will be rectified once I move out of this space and into my crafting cottage. I have one more creative space to show you. And you're like, wait a minute, this looks like a bedroom. It is. It's my guest bedroom, but it is also my sewing area. I've decorated the room with kind of a vintage theme. That's why I have this vintage looking mirror and this vintage dresser, which I haven't decided whether I'm going to leave it that color or I'm going to paint it. But that dresser is filled with fabrics. At the foot of the bed, I have this vintage sewing machine, which I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do with it, but I plan to do something with it at some point. And then I have an extra cubicle, I think came from Walmart, with some extra fabrics. Two of them are projects to be done, and one of them are leftover towels that we don't have room for in the bathroom, and the other is sheets for this guest room space. This is my sewing corner or sewing wall. Everything here is sewing except for the rocking chair, which I usually put in that corner when I have company. And that's a chair that needs to be recaned. It's an old rocking chair and I love it. I might wind up putting that in the crafting cottage, or I may leave it in the guest room. I don't know. And I'll probably rearrange this whole room once I get my sewing stuff out of this space. And the closet there is jam-packed full of sewing supplies, basket making supplies, and also art camp supplies. So that's another area that needs to be purged. Vintage plates. I have pictures of all my children with their spouses, including my husband and I, because I wanted this room to have a romantic feel to it, a vintage feel for my guests. And it's got some of my artwork in it as well. But let's talk about the sewing area. Standard folding table. I would prefer to have the sewing machine where it pops down inside the table out of space, making room for the tabletop to be used for something else. That will happen in my crafting cottage. But for now, the sewing machine is always out. I love it. It's a great machine. It's one of those old, it's actually a vintage machine. Because it's all metal parts. I love the old machines. They just last longer. They can do more. They're a real workhorse compared to today's modern lightweight plastic with plastic parts in it that are going to break down. And their sewing machines won't last, so they're not worth the money they paid for them. I got this machine off of, I think it was an ad I saw on Facebook. I think I got it for $100. Awesome. Worth every dime. So I have a lot of my sewing supplies. Again, I use pretty boxes to hide the clutter, okay? Pretty boxes to hide the clutter. And then I've got this shelf here that's got a lot of sewing and a few craft supplies, but mostly sewing supplies. Threads and my board, which that'll probably change, or maybe I'll actually use it for a picture frame and a piece of artwork when I take the sewing out of this space. But I even have some vintage images here on the sewing board to keeping with the vintage theme of this sewing room, because this is guest room. But yeah, I need to get this out of this room. See, there's not a lot of space between the bed and the sewing machine and the door. It's a small room. So I really need to get moved out of here into the crafting cottage. I'm about to show you what's in that closet. Look how full this closet is. It is jam-packed. I have a shelf in there with baskets where I keep patterns. I have 3 boxes of patterns That's fiber fill for stuffing stuffed animals or things like that. Filler there. Down at the bottom, gift bags. The smaller ones are inside the basket. The larger ones are right here. And then I have a bin of, I think it's just denim, because I make a lot of aprons and things out of denim. And then there are other tubs around the corner that you can't see. There are more baskets in there. The nice thing about the shelf is that if I need to get a basket inside there, well, maybe I'll just show you. Okay, I can pull out the basket. It's a shelf. And then I can slide the next thing over. And that one has felts. That's where all the felts are. I've forgotten. There's fabric in that one, and I forgot what's in there. You see, you forget. If you can't see, you forget. Extra tool, a big roll of interfacing, which I was using it up, gobs and gobs of it, when I was making masks, and now I have excess. But I'll hang on to it because that's something you always need. There's a tub of fabrics for making stuffed animals, a tub of for a project for making sock bunnies, all the socks and felts and all the supplies that I use for making that. I have a tub up there with all my silky and shiny fabrics, specialty fabrics, and then I have a project up there for making mop dolls. So everything is in there for making mop dolls. This is a quilt that's a quilt batting for a project that I'm working on. And this is just overflow patterns. And that's another area that I need to destash. And then the rest of this closet, I hung a rack up high. So all through the top, that's basket making supplies, and this is materials for making baskets, and there and all the way back to the corner, those are all basket making supplies. And then we got what little tiny space we have behind here is coats. That's why we need a coat closet. And then down in the corner that you can't see, in the corner down there, are boxes of art camp supplies. So I really need to go through that and destash. And this closet needs to just be a closet for when I have guests, instead of being crammed full of just stuff. That is my woodworking shop. I feel very fortunate to have that. I was able to pay for that with my arts and craft teaching and selling of goods and services that I provide for people. Sewing jobs, painting jobs, and selling signs that I made. It's nice to have a space devoted to woodworking. Now my husband uses it. He has a lot of his auto mechanic stuff, tools and materials in there. My son, since he lives with us now, he uses it a lot. And I still have that space to work and do woodworking because I love the smell of sawdust, the smell of wood being cut and something being built. So that's one of my creative spaces as well. This is going to be the location of my crafting cottage. From this green marker there to that green marker right there, to that little one, short one right there, to the one over here. So this space, we have got all of the stumps. This one is outside, so I don't know if I'll take this one out or not, but all the stumps that were along there, we've gotten rid of them. Well, almost. They're out of the ground, they're disconnected. We're still just trying to burn them down. We just need to collect a bunch of leaves, pine straw, and fallen branches to build a hot enough fire to be able to burn away the remainder of these stumps. So we're getting the area prepared for my crafting cottage. I can't wait. I look forward to the day that I can move all of my crafting, sewing, arts, card making, paper crafting, all of that out and into this space right here. That I will have everything, all the tools at my disposal. And they'll all be very handy location in one room. And I'll have lots of open space to work, lots of table space to work on various projects, different stations, a sewing area, crafting area, an art area, and just one of the areas will be a more casual area where I can sit down and do needlework or basket making. So, which the place is going to have a sofa bed in it. It could serve as a guest house when I have, somebody, maybe a single person or a couple that wants to visit us. It'll be an extra space so they can have some privacy for sleeping, and it'll be a place where I can hold classes, maybe a group of 10 ladies. We can gather around the main table in the center of the room, and I can teach a craft or a painting class. And that's the only way that I'm going to do any kind of classes. It's going to be group classes with adults is what I would prefer. With children, it's just everybody's at a different stage, and I'm just bored of teaching simple art to children. I want to do bigger, more complicated art for myself personally. And I don't mind doing a fairly simple project with ladies, something that can be done in 2 hours. I don't mind doing that and do it as a group session, and I would only want to do it maybe once a month. No more than that, because I want my time, I want my space to be able to do the creative things that I love to do. If you got this far in the video, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end.